that you'll have Ntikeng Muhlele, that you'll have Zuki Swavana, that you will have Nick Mhlongo on one platform. So this is really a great privilege for all of us. We're going to drink tonight. Drink of your wisdom. Thank you so much for your contribution to the cultural landscape. You guys have got to be serious, man. This is a very serious gig for me. These are great people, you know. Wow, okay. Hans, you know, I want to get the race thing out the way. Let's start there. From an outside point of view, you looking in as an Afrikaans man at the literature of South Africa, what do you see are the gray areas and things that need immediate address and redress?
Right, that's quite an easy answer to give, you know. It's obviously indigenous languages need to get a lot more attention, a lot more infrastructure in terms of the publishing industry and so on. But I just want to correct you on one thing, you know, looking in from the outside. I'm not an outsider. I'm an African, you know.
Okay.
I speak in an African language.
Okay.
So, you know, and that's maybe another thing that I think needs to be done, is that the white people and the nationalists and the colonialists and so on hijacked Afrikaans in the 19th century. And it's time that we, South Africans, hijack Afrikaans back and make it our language. So that's another grey area that I think we need to look at.
Okay, so it's because I saw your comments on Stellenbosch and you saying that it needs to be, to stay an Afrikaans university.
Yes.
And wait, guys, that's why I wanted to get the gray areas out the way first. And coming from a history where we might say that Stellenbosch was built on privilege, why would we want to deny the majority, which is the African child, access to that? Or why would we want to force down Afrikaans on them after 76?
You know, I think when it comes to universities, you have to look at the full picture at all the universities in the country. I think there are something like 47 tertiary institutions. Most of them are English language in the first place, and some of them have informal education in other languages. Afrikaans had something like 25 tertiary institutions. That privilege was given to them by apartheid, which was a very exploitative institution. So you could say that those institutions were built on the sweat and the blood of black people. That's certainly true. And so those numbers needed to be reduced. But what you are having now is that only at Potchefstroom is any Afrikaans as the main language left. So that's going too far, you know. If you just do your simple calculations, I think it's quite fair to say that we bring them down to from 25, say, I'm not sure what the correct figure is, to maybe 2, you know, Potchefstroom and Stellenbosch. And then when you talk about the majority thing, there's such a thing as majoritarian thought. And our constitution is against majoritarian thought, and any proper liberal constitution or any proper constitution that works is against majoritarian thought, where the demands of the majority are imposed on the rest of the people, especially when you have a large number of people like 55 million South Africans. So that's one point. But if you look at it from another perspective, also talking about the majority of people in the Western Cape use Afrikaans as their home language. And my concern is not so much for the whiteys. You know, they've had their turn, they have their privilege. They can go to English universities with the beautiful English that they learned in their Afrikaans schools, you know. But what about the Cape Flats people who speak Afrikaans as their home language? Where should they go? You know, so why are they just pushed to one side? And so when I say that Stellenbosch should stay Afrikaans, I would also add the rider that there must be a condition, maybe imposed by the state, that there should be a program to provide free education to black Afrikaans speakers in the Western Cape.
Okay, okay. We will have an opportunity to engage with the panel. I'm sure a lot of people want to engage, especially with the Stellenbosch issue some more. How has the politics of the country affected your writing process?
It's affected my writing very much. It's practically a reason why I wanted to become a writer when I was young. At a young age, I decided that I wanted to become an anti-apartheid activist. I didn't quite know how, because I just finished my military training and I didn't like the military, so I didn't want to do anything military, you know. So my next option was journalism. And I joined journalism being under the impression that if you wrote about what was going on in the country, you would start a revolution, which wasn't so. And then I also, I loved writing. Writing was, reading I picked it up from my father, you know, who loved the Russian writers and so on. So from an early stage, I got to realize that writing is also a way of fighting apartheid, especially in the tradition of people like Nadine Gordimer and Andre Brunk and Breiten Breitenbach and so on. So yes, I joined an anti-apartheid publishing house called Taurus. And I published various publications. Some of them were banned.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
please tell us about those ones.
There was a book that a collection of interviews that I did called the Trojaanse Perd, the Trojan Horse, which was about, I don't know if you guys remember, it's probably before your time, the Trojan Horse incident in 1985 in Athlone. Where a policeman hid on the back of a truck, and when children started throwing stones at them, they jumped up and killed about 7 of them. An horrific incident. So a colleague of mine, Hein Willemse, did a lot of interviews with the survivors and the families of who were involved in the thing. And I did some other interviews with, among others, Trevor Manuel, who was then under house arrest, you know, so we both transgressed the law. And this book was then banned by the police. But, you know, the thing that I remember about that was that the policeman who came to confiscate our books looked at this story and he said, he didn't say anything, but he said, look, I'm not going to take your books today. I'm coming back in 2 or 3 days. If you want to get rid of the books in your own way, do so. And so then we got together and we started, we bought a lot of envelopes, and this was before the time of email. And we started getting addresses from our address books and put them on the envelopes and worked through the night putting books into the envelopes, and we sent all these books to opinion formers in South Africa.
Email.
So, yeah.
Emailed them.
Yes. but you know, I'm mentioning it, and maybe we're taking a bit of a byway here now, but I'm mentioning it because there were people who were part of the establishment and even the forces who didn't like at all what was happening, and in their own small way tried to sabotage the system. And this policeman was one of them, you know, because he could have taken those books right away.
So
but he gave us a chance to.
Then?
Sorry?
Do you still have copies?
I still have copies at home, yes. A few, a handful, yeah.
Wow, okay, so I'll come back to the Afrikaans story. Habutin Dikeng, your writing is so poetic, so lyrical, so yachamana. You know? Right? I was like, wow. And I want to understand your background and how somebody who grows up in a rural area and in Tembisa writes like that.
Thanks, Tsuki. It's a very, very difficult question to answer. I'll attempt to answer it this way, to say that, you know, it's important to do things against type, because people don't expect someone as dark as me to be able to master anything.
Exactly.
Let alone Eurocentric.
That was my point.
Yeah, construct.
Like that.
Of literature, and do it at the very best level that you can. But I thought that, you know, that's on an ideological plane. You know, from a craft point of view, I like beautiful things, and I did theatrical arts, and the world is so ugly in so many ways.
Yeah.
I don't see myself a preacher on a pedestal trying to solve the horrors of the world, but I do think that there is space for aesthetics when someone does things. And, you know, it cuts right across. A really good sculptor, a really good dancer, a really beautiful, beautiful building in architecture, a beautiful person, a beautiful mood, etc., etc., etc.
Where does your love of words come from? Because I think that to make something beautiful, you first have to love it.
It's another difficult question, because I don't set out to say I'm going to write beautiful words. It's not I don't consciously sit and say, you know, I have to write this sentence and it has to be so beautiful and it needs to sing. It's my mode of expression, right? The only way that I can perhaps try to decode it or to fragment it a bit is to say, I am a person of few words as a human being, and my character is that of a very introverted person. So I think a lot about things that I see, but I don't necessarily say anything about them. But it doesn't mean I don't have opinions about them. So when I do sit and write, it's very, very special in that where someone would use 700 words, I could do with 13. And that way the work becomes chiseled, and then people say, oh, it's very polished, and, you know, you go, but the truth is that...
So do you keep editing and editing, is this what you're saying?
No. Only sufficient language makes it to the page. I'm not one of those writers that go and then someone says, I've chopped my manuscript 80 pages. You didn't need to write them in the first place, you know. So that's how I work. And it's not any strict diet and whatever. It's not. A really, really great musician, for instance, does not need to play 8,000 notes. They can play 2 notes, and you'll get a feeling from that. Right? And then when someone relates to another person, they say, ooh, you like that particular girl or that particular bloke. What do you like about them? They can't say, no, he polishes his shoes and he looks like he brushes his teeth very much, and he can dance and he can swim and he's fit and he eats well with his mouth closed, whatever. It would be something like, there's just something about that guy. There's that thing. Right. And it's very few. So I think that applies to art, it applies to life, and it also applies to self-expression. That doesn't mean that other writers cannot write lengthy things and very expansive ways of expression. They can. I just prefer to do it with fewer words.
Okay, right? Yay! I told you I'm sitting here with greatness, ne? You must understand. Galeko to come to Zetu. I really need the energy that's in the corner there to be somewhere here. Bankupile but TV, but it will be better for the visuals. So I ask you with humility, with love, with that Xhosa energy, that Xhosa strong woman fire that forces everyone to do things their way. Otherwise, you know I'm going to be blasting you on Twitter, you Polokwane people, you know this. Don't make me threaten you, please. Our writers will be... Go blokile. What did you say? What did you say?
The battery is dead.
Oh, see, we can, because I was about to come to you, Vede.
You can go to Nick. No. Good leg.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming through. I must tell you that there are a lot of awards sitting here, so we won't mind a round of applause while we sort out Zukiswa's microphone. This is really industry royalty. I would Nick Mhlongo. No. Listen. Women are in control now. Okay. Wow, you know I'm a fan. You know you and Zukiswa in our generation are like the head boy and head girl. I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but it's like you have set the bar, you have led, you are the trailblazers. What I notice specifically with your work, Abudnik, is that it's raw, right? It's itself, and then juxtaposed against the traditional education system. So I want you to tell me about the gray area for you, and perhaps maybe the pressures you feel or not feel, that conflict between academia, literature, and this is who I am, and I'm doing this. This is my story. This is my voice.
Okay, it's a very taxing question. Huh? And thank you for calling me Abuti. You know, always I've been told that I'm the youngest writer. So
no, you're an elder now.
Oh,
the new ones have come.
Thank you. Yes.
The new ones are here.
Yeah. I think with me it goes down to the fact that, you know, growing up, I didn't want to be a writer. You know, some of you have read my books. Actually, it's a reflection of that. For instance, when I was growing up, there was in Soweto. For instance, I grew up in both Shawelo, and then we moved to Orlando West, the famous street, Vilagaza Street. That's why I always joke with that Dr. Mahlamela that. After we're just waiting for Desmond to pass on, and then it will be me. Because
we bow down. Yeah, we bow down.
Because former President Mandela has passed on. So
you're the next great.
Yes, I'm hoping like that. So not that I'm wishing death anyway, but when I grew up, it was more of being a lawyer. So what happens is that why I wanted to be a lawyer is that I grew up during apartheid time. Actually, when I studied from in a public school. And you know, when you are living in a township, there is one particular family where you go to when you want to watch TV, A-Team and whatever, you know, it's that family, you know. So there was this family which, along our street, which was so good that they had a double story. But I tried to find out, okay, what is this person doing? I found out that this person is, he makes his money by representing people that are, you know, incarcerated during apartheid times. So there will be lots of them. Maybe 20, you woke up in the morning and then, oh, so-and-so is no longer here. Oh, where is he? Ah, no, there's a trial, you know? And then the other is a lawyer. So he makes good money. He's got nice wife, beautiful children. they
And a
eat,
television.
yeah, and they eat they eat breakfast, the lunch and dinner. At home, you only have breakfast and lunch and dinner is only same thing. You know, it's pub. So those become your role models. You know, so when I grew up wanting to be a lawyer.
Okay.
So when I went to the university, the first thing that I did was to apply to be a lawyer. Unfortunately, that was 1994, during the time of transition at Vet University. So I went to a university which was formerly white, you know, which is Vet University. And when you are at Vet University, what happens is that, because this is the prestigious white institution, my brothers used to study at the University of Natal, and when they all did this, that's why I hate mathematics. So they all did mathematics, and I failed matric because of mathematics and Afrikaans. So they will tell me, go back to school. But you find that English I did well, and other subjects, biology was good, history, perfect. But at VET, you go there and they say to you, your points don't qualify you to do this. So you have to choose another one. And then they chose BA for me. And so one day I'm walking, you know the orientation week in the universities. You go orientation week trying to find a course, because this was not a course, you wanted to do law. And I'm walking, you know, they have all these stalls. Walking, oh, so I see all the books, African literature, you know. So it's listed there. And there's a young man who is, even the class there is written Eska Patlele class, you know. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, and then I realized that these are the books that I grew up reading. I didn't grow up, I didn't know Charles Dickens, honestly speaking, until I was a third-year student.
You are so blessed.
Yeah, I didn't know, because at home it was just African literature. You know, some of the literature that we read, because my brother used to study at the University of Natal, some of the literature that we read, you were not sure. You used to read them under the blanket, thinking that if the neighbors come and see me reading Steve Biko, I write what I like, or Nelson Mandela's, what is it? Not Easy Walk to Freedom. They will arrest you. So you used to read these books under the blanket, and I used to read, because those were the only available books. So imagine going to a university and you see these books, piles of books, you have read them, and say, oh, -1 course. This course I'm going to take. Yeah, I'm going to take it, this African literature. And just to go back to it, the person who was selling it is none other than Paswa Nempe, who was my lecturer at Vet University. So I decided I'm taking this course, you know, instead of doing law, I'm going to do this, because it's -1 course. So definitely this one, I'm going to pass it. So I'm going to concentrate on these 3, because at that time, there was lots of exclusions, academic exclusion at Vet University, but I knew that you will never exclude me, because you only have to pass 2 courses. That one is already done. You know? Yeah. So that's how I became to be a writer. And then,
do you think?
And in my writing, coming back to it, in my writing, I decided that, you know what I'm going to focus in? I'm going to focus on my failures. So that hence there's Dog Eat Dog, there's Way Back Home, and After Tears, because those are about the failures of myself and other people from my generation, because we're thrown into this university whereby you have to be taught for the first time by a white person in your life, because you come from a township school. In a township school, during my time, it was very possible to find that a person who teaches you is the same person who passed in the same institution, same high school. And then now they become your teacher. They are not trained, you know. So I decided that I'm going to write about all these ills.